Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to plunge into complex issues, cut through all that noise, and really pull out the insights you need. Today, we're tackling the really fast-moving world of global trade and procurement. If you felt maybe a bit swamped by headlines about tariffs, policy changes, economic uncertainty, well, you're definitely in the right place. Our mission today: unpack these recent trade shifts, understand the real impacts on businesses, and crucially, figure out how smart companies are, not just coping, but actually thriving.
Yeah, it's an environment that really demands agility. And for businesses, understanding this stuff isn't just compliance, right? It's fundamental. It hits everything from supply chains to, well, the bottom line, profitability. And we're seeing organizations focused on business excellence, like ProcSolve, for instance, really stepping up here. They're offering integrated solutions, guidance, leveraging things like AI platforms and strategic procurement services to help companies navigate all this, turning challenges into opportunities, really.
Okay, let's dig into that. You mentioned rapid shifts. Canada's been, well, right at the center of some incredibly fast, significant moves in trade policy recently. Things are moving so quickly. Businesses with cross-border operations must be feeling it immediately. What's actually been going on there?
You're right, the speed is quite remarkable. The perfect example is Canada's Digital Services Tax, the DST. This was a planned 3% tax aimed at big tech companies. There's over 750 million global revenue, and it was even retroactive to 2022. But then pretty suddenly it was withdrawn, June 30, 2025, pulled.
Wow. Okay, a major tax retroactive to just gone. That feels like a huge policy U-turn. What was the thinking behind that? Why the sudden change?
Well, the official reason was strategic. It was to support these complex negotiations on a new economic and security partnership with the U.S. They're aiming for an agreement by July 21, 2025. So it really shows how these seemingly separate tax things are tied into bigger partnerships. It looks like a clear trade-off, a concession maybe for a larger deal. But, and this is interesting, while that tax went away, another major policy came right in.
Another one. Yeah. Right after. What was that?
Yeah, Canada brought in reciprocal procurement policies effective July 14th, 2025. Basically, this policy limits who can bid on federal government contracts in Canada. It's now mainly suppliers from Canada itself or from trading partners who give Canadian suppliers similar access through existing agreements.
So hang on. If a country doesn't offer Canada similar market access, their companies might be shut out of federal deals. Sounds like Canada's really drawing a line in the sand there, protecting its own procurement market.
Exactly. That's the aim. Stop countries without reciprocal access from, well, unfairly benefiting from Canada's federal spending. So if you're a supplier from a country with no procurement trade deal with Canada, you're generally out now. Very few exceptions. The implications are pretty direct for international firms.
Yeah. Okay, so we're seeing major policy shifts announced and taking effect within weeks, sometimes just days. How does a company, especially one with complex global operations, even plan for the future when things change that fast? That speed must be a huge challenge.
It absolutely is. And that's where being proactive becomes so critical. These aren't just minor tweaks. They're fundamental shifts in how international trade works. They hit supply chains, costs, even long-term investment choices for companies operating across borders. It really forces businesses to be much more agile, much more forward-thinking in their planning.
That's a really powerful point. And it sounds like these policies create immediate financial headaches. How do these bigger shifts actually translate into the day-to-day for procurement teams? Because it's not just Canada, is it? We're seeing similar tariff moves impacting costs way beyond North America.
Oh, absolutely right. The ripple effects go far. I mean, look at the U.S. tariff situation. Policies from the U.S. President's office involve significant duties on imports from various places, including Canada. We've seen U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum effectively doubled, up to 50%. And importantly, Canada didn't get an exemption. That hits Canadian industries exporting those materials straight away, forces them to rethink everything.
And when tariffs like that hit, how has Canada and maybe even its provinces pushed back?
Well, Canada definitely responded with retaliatory measures. There's a 25% tariff on certain high-profile American goods, things like orange juice, wine, some appliances, things consumers notice. Plus, there are steel-specific measures, too, like a 50% surtax on some steel imports from countries without free trade agreements once quotas are filled. And you're right about the provinces. They've acted, too, sometimes quite visibly. We've seen things like pulling American liquor off shelves in government stores or banning U.S. firms from bidding on provincial contracts. It adds another layer of difficulty.
So it's this multi-level economic tension. what are the actual economic consequences for businesses caught in this back and forth? Who ends up paying for these tariffs?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it creates a lot of financial uncertainty. If a Canadian company is the importer, say, of U.S. steel, their costs go up immediately. That squeezes margins, hits cash flow hard. But it's not always the importer bearing the brunt. If the U.S. buyer is the importer, the higher price can just kill demand for Canadian goods, makes them less competitive. That could potentially weaken Canada's overall GDP, maybe even lead to job losses in export-heavy sectors. It often feels like a lose-lose for some parts of the economy. Consumers might pay more, businesses face lower demand or tighter margins.
Are governments offering any kind of help? Any relief measures to soften the blow?
Yes, the Canadian federal government has put forward some measures. For example, they deferred payments for corporate income tax and GST/HST for several months. That specific move was designed to free up, billions in cash liquidity for businesses, kind of a short-term cushion in very uncertain times.
It's just so clear these huge shifts create massive daily challenges for procurement teams. The uncertainty is, wow, how do you even manage that day to day, let alone try and get ahead of it?
That is the absolutely crucial question. And it shows why businesses aren't actually helpless, despite all the volatility. This whole situation really highlights the vital strategic role of proactive procurement. It's about moving beyond just reacting to the latest tariff news and actually building resilience right into your core operations.
Okay, so what are the strategies for procurement teams trying to mitigate these tariff hits and just the general volatility? What should companies be doing now to be proactive?
Well, it might sound a bit surprising, but some folks in the industry still seem to favor a wait-and-see approach, maybe hoping it all blows over. But honestly, most experts strongly advise against that. It's a big gamble, could backfire badly. The consensus really is that companies need to be actively looking at alternative sourcing locations. Think Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe maybe, and start planning for supply chain shifts before they become an emergency. Pre-buying inventory is another option, yeah, but you've got to balance that carefully against storage costs, the risk of holding too much stock if demand changes.
Right. So it's not just about reacting to tariffs or finding a cheaper supplier somewhere else. It sounds like it's about fundamentally making the whole procurement function stronger. For businesses already stretched thin, though, how do they make that shift from just putting out fires to this more strategic long-term thinking?
That's exactly the pivot. This broader focus on strategic procurement, it isn't just about tariffs. It's about the overall health of the business, creating real, sustainable value. I mean, studies consistently show that effective procurement can cut overall costs by up to 15% and improve operational efficiency by maybe 30%. That 15% cost reduction, that's not just a number on a spreadsheet. That could be your innovation budget or the buffer you need when the next tariff hits unexpectedly. It really transforms procurement from, what used to be seen as just a back office cost center into a strategic value driver.
That's a potentially massive impact. So why is cost reduction in procurement so critical right now, beyond just the immediate tariff relief?
Because reducing procurement cost directly boosts your profit margins, often without needing to increase sales. It also makes you more productive by streamlining things, gives you a real competitive edge in this volatile market, and, this is key, it massively improves cash flow. And let's be clear, we're not talking about crude cost cutting, the kind that hurts quality or damages supplier relationships. We're talking cost reduction through smarter, strategic, long-term choices. Optimizing supplier relationships, maybe using new tech, diversifying where you buy from. It's about building resilience in.
So these aren't just abstract ideas. These are practical, actionable things companies are doing right now to adapt, get stronger, maybe even find an advantage.
Precisely. It's all about being proactive and strategic, not reactive and panicked. It's recognizing that volatility isn't just a problem to avoid, it's the landscape where agility becomes your ultimate competitive weapon.
Okay, and speaking of being proactive, let's zero in on one skill that seems absolutely critical right now: negotiation. With all these trade shifts happening so fast, mastering negotiation feels, well, non-negotiable for businesses.
Absolutely. And the numbers around negotiation are really compelling, sometimes surprisingly so. Think about this. Every single dollar you save in supplier negotiations goes straight to the bottom line. Every dollar. Even just a tiny 1% decrease in what you spend with suppliers can boost profits by as much as 4%. That's a huge multiplier effect, especially if your margins are already tight.
A huge multiplier. But what's the downside? What happens if negotiation skills are weak, especially now when the stakes are so high?
Well, poor negotiation skills can actually lead to a significant profit loss, maybe around 5%, directly hitting the company's health. But on the flip side, enhanced skills, they've been shown to lead to up to a 50% improvement in profit. It really shows how vital this is. And what's really eye-opening, maybe the most startling stat, is that a huge chunk of companies, some studies say as high as 80%, don't have formal negotiation processes. And that lack of structure, it can lead to a massive drop in net income. Some reports show a staggering 63.3% decrease in some cases.
That's amazing. Why do you think so many companies, knowing the financial impact, lack these formal processes? What's the biggest mistake they make?
Often it's probably a mix of things, maybe overconfidence, lack of specific training, or just seeing negotiation as this, one-off event instead of a core strategic skill. The biggest mistake is treating it purely as an art, not as a process you can actually systematize and get better at. So the question becomes, what are the practical things you can do to build leverage?
Yes, exactly. What are those actionable steps for businesses facing these tough negotiations?
Okay, first, visibility into fair market pricing. This is absolutely key. Don't just rely on old records or what your supplier tells you. Run mini RFPs, do market tests with maybe 2 or 3 comparable suppliers. It's not about being sneaky. It's about gathering intelligence. It tells you where your current supplier really stands on price, what value adds are normal now, how hard they're actually trying to keep you. Then you can go back to your current supplier with real data. Maybe even suggest a midterm price review clause if it's a multi-year deal. It just empowers your team.
So it's about deep preparation, knowing the market inside out, not just trying to strong-arm them. What about streamlining the actual contract talks? They can drag on forever sometimes.
Absolutely. That's where creating a negotiation prep pack is invaluable. Before you even talk to the supplier, get your internal house in order. Put together a simple brief. What are our clear commercial goals? What are our pre-approved fallback positions? What are the absolute deal breakers, the non-negotiables? And who needs to approve what? Define those escalation paths. Having that internal clarity. Suppliers can sense it when a buying team is aligned. It just leads to faster decisions, more focused talks, less time wasted debating internally while the supplier waits.
And what about building flexibility into the deals themselves, especially when business needs or even trade rules can change so fast? How do you future-proof a contract?
Yeah, this is vital for resilience. Negotiate for things like volume-based pricing tiers, so you pay based on what you actually use as your needs fluctuate. Include step-down clauses, maybe, that automatically adjust prices if your usage drops significantly. Even things like reopener clauses, which schedule formal review points down the line, let you reassess pricing based on performance, market changes, whatever. If you frame these as ways to share risk and build a partnership that can adapt, it shows foresight, not just that you're trying to nickel and dime them.
It sounds like solid preparation is the best defense, especially if you're maybe one person facing a whole team from the supplier side.
Exactly right. If you don't have the numbers, you need structure and prep. Send out a pre-read pack beforehand, key goals, timelines, during the negotiation. Stick rigidly to a clear agenda. Always ask for itemized cost breakdowns. That's huge for finding hidden costs in bundled prices. And insist on written summaries of what's agreed after each session. That disciplined structure, it signals confidence, control, which is massive leverage in itself. Keeps everyone honest and focused.
Okay, and finally, how does technology fit into all this, especially if supplier info is scattered everywhere in a company?
That's where data and tech become real game changers. Even something simple like a supplier intelligence hub could just be a shared spreadsheet or a SharePoint site is essential. You need to track the basics. Supplier name, contract dates, terms, pricing history, performance metrics, all in one place. And crucially, schedule regular reviews, maybe quarterly, to spot renewals coming up 60, 90 days out. That gives you time to benchmark, review performance, plan your negotiation strategy, not panic at the last minute. And beyond simple hubs, the whole procurement software market is booming. We're seeing AI tools automating vendor discovery, spend analysis, contract management. It's really transforming how companies handle sourcing. It's a complete mindset shift from reactive to data-driven strategic procurement.
It's real interesting hearing you talk about leverage not as aggression, but as, well, deep preparation, market smarts, strategic thinking, and using data and tech smartly. It almost flips the old image of the tough negotiator on its head. It's about building power deliberately.
Exactly. It's about creating strength through knowledge and foresight, and often that actually leads to better, more collaborative outcomes in the long run.
Wow, what a deep dive indeed. We've covered so much today. The shifting sands of Canadian trade, the real impact of tariffs, and then the critical role of strategic procurement and skilled negotiation to manage risk and create value.
Yes, absolutely. The key takeaway really is that companies need to move beyond just cutting costs to actually creating value. The challenges right now are significant, no doubt, but there are real opportunities for resilience, for growth, if you focus on strong procurement, smart negotiation, and leveraging these new technologies effectively.
So as you go about your day, here's something to think about. In a world where trade rules can literally change overnight, what hidden connections in your own supply chain might be your next big vulnerability? Or, maybe surprisingly, your greatest source of untapped negotiation power? We really encourage you to keep exploring these topics. Specialized guidance, like the kind ProcSolve offers, can genuinely help businesses turn these huge challenges into strategic advantages. Until next time, keep digging deeper.